Yes guys, so the topic for today is going to be how we fix shoulder pain from overhead lifting. Now there could be a number of different injuries at the shoulder from your snatches or jerk variations, anything like that. However, the treatment method is fairly similar for most of the injuries. So number one on the list, like most things, it's fairly simple. It's reducing the volume of that painful movement or stopping it completely, depending on how severe it is and how much pain you're in day to day. So again, I would go off that 3 to 4 out of 10 pain score. If it's above that during training and when you're doing the movement or afterwards, I'd probably stop completely. And if it's sort of a 2 to 3 out of 10 with manageable volume and you can still do the movement with a little bit of pain, I would just knock down the volume a little bit, just let the muscles, tendons, the joint recover a little bit during the early stages of rehab. Number 2 on the list would be improving shoulder stability. Now, I work with a lot of clients who can snatch or jerk a lot of weight, let's say over 100 kilos, and then they can't even do 4 kilos with a bottom-up kettlebell press or hold. So there's a bit of an issue here, and obviously I think it's also a general issue with people just not doing enough accessory work around their barbell stuff. So you normally just go into the gym, move the heavy weights, do their percentage work, and then they sort of neglect their accessories and they fall behind a little bit. Number 3, some people do have a range of motion issue. Usually though, this is a positional strength issue. So passively they can get into the position, but they're very uncomfortable and weak in overhead positions, whether that be in a snatch position, split jerk, power jerk, whatever that may be. So at FCR, we'd have progressions to make people more comfortable in that position, to load it appropriately and strip it right back. So for example, in the snatch, it could be like a supported SOTS press with a kettlebell, or even further back than that, depending on how much pain you're in, and then building all the way back up to your classic snatch and being more comfortable in that position that you're struggling with, wherever that is in the lift. I'm also a really big fan of bodybuilding, so that's number 4, and this is a really common theme throughout the whole process of rehab. Working this around shoulder injuries is fairly simple because with most shoulder injuries you can still do a lot of supported pulling and pressing within certain ranges. So for example, a lot of shoulder injuries you can still do quite a lot of horizontal pressing without being irritated too much, generally because the overhead movement is the thing that's painful. So you can do some sort of dumbbell pressing, light obviously, and then you can do all your rows and pulling movements, not with body weight, but supported dumbbell rows, basically what the client can tolerate within that pain score. And we're also trying to target areas that people typically neglect with weightlifting. So in the back, that would typically be again sort of upper back stuff, rotator cuff stuff, mid to lower traps, things like that sort of fall by the wayside and aren't really that interesting to train, but make a big difference to your overhead position. Another benefit of the bodybuilding is it's just going to help your weightlifting numbers in the future, because if you can get a little bit stronger and you can get some more muscle tissue on you, you're going to be able to lift bigger weights, because more muscle tissue gives you more force, and that gives you the ability to move bigger weights. And then number 5 on the list, we touched about this previously, so it's sport specific progressions that you can manage within that pain score, and then depending where you are in the rehab process, it'd be progressions building all the way back up to that classic snatch or jerk. So I gave the example before of the supported SOTS press with a kettlebell. Moving a bit further along, for example, with a snatch, it could be starting off with a light dumbbell snatch, for example, midway through rehab, and then obviously building back up to that classic barbell snatch with things like power snatches, hang snatch variations, muscle snatch, just so we can improve the capacity and strength of that shoulder before we subject it to the normal load of that classic snatch and the requirements in that bottom position, which is quite high on the shoulder. And then number 6 on the list would be testing your normal training volume and intensity. So obviously this will be building back up to that. It wouldn't be a straight jump, and this would probably be at the end of sort of 12 to 16 weeks is what I would say. Hopefully you'll be able to do this with minimal to no pain in 99% of cases if you've done everything correctly. And then what we advise to prevent injuries in the future would be the same thing that I always recommend for most injuries. So training with optimal volume and intensity, so avoiding those massive spikes in training, being sensible with what you're doing, not testing your 1 rep max all the time, making sure you're getting the basics right in terms of sleep and nutrition, and then also some prehab work to carry on doing once you've finished the rehab process. So for the shoulder, that could be stuff that you can just add in at the end of a session, so like YTWs, progressions, the bottom up press, things like that you can keep progressing and basically keep working on and have some goals to build up strength in that area. But again, that is on the bottom of the list in terms of reducing injury risk. So number 1 would be managing training loads, number 2 would be sleep nutrition, and then number 3 would be prehab stuff. So again, don't just do the prehab stuff, do the basics first and then add that into your training as well. And then alongside that, the prehab stuff is also just keeping some bodybuilding stuff in there. So not just doing 4 barbell lifts in a session, maybe doing 2 or 3. And then I would say having a bigger emphasis on the bodybuilding stuff, which is really important for strength sports. Hopefully that all makes sense with my reasoning behind how I treat shoulder pain from overhead lifting and how I actually help clients get back to lifting pain-free and make them a little bit stronger as well when they get back to that. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, or feel free to drop me a DM on Instagram or Facebook.